let me just spruce this up a little bit.
Tobias.
He comes to us from Sweden.
First off, we're excited that you're at the NRB 2023 with us.
Thank you so much.
And we would like to welcome you here. And why don't you tell us a bit about what's going on with you?
So you're a filmmaker, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Yes, I'm a filmmaker.
And is your film on gender transformation? That's the issue at hand, correct?
Yeah, gender transformation is my first longer documentary. So I've been working with TV series and shorter documentaries they have won some awards before. I was asked by the Epoch Times if I could make a movie, a documentary about the topic of transgender. And when I first heard about the topic, I was like, I also looked at the Swedish television. They made 3 documentaries about transgender.
Oh.
And actually, they made this investigative reports, and they saw that a lot of young people, when they take the medicines is drugs, actually experimental drugs. They get hurt a lot, so they can get all kinds of side effects that they don't talk so much about.
No, they don't.
For example, you get the bone density in the body, it gets really low, like really bad. So there was one story by the Swedish state television, and they showed that one girl, she had been on puberty blockers for 4 years.
Oh goodness.
And now she could hardly stand up because the bone density in the body was so bad. And so when I saw these documentaries, I'm like, wow, this is, I never heard about this before. Why haven't I heard about it? Because it's hurting so many children. And Sweden is a very liberal country usually, but in this topic, it's like, Sweden is actually standing up for what's going on. Because,
for the children?
For the children.
Yeah.
So is this an Americanized issue that you guys were facing, predominantly in America with the gender transformations?
Yeah. The topic is mainly, it's happening in America. So it's an American perspective, but actually it's a world perspective because this is happening all over the world. I mean, it's been pushed in Sweden as well, but now Sweden is pushing a little bit back.
I like that. That's good.
So Swedish children are not subjected to it in the same way as the American public. So that's what when I was starting to do investigations here in the U.S. We interviewed a lot of people, and then I learned that here it's really pushed for, and also in the education system.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. So in Sweden, the parents are standing up and saying no to this.
They don't have to in the same way that they have to in the U.S. In Sweden, it's not pushed for, for children. It's quite hard before you're 18 to get these puberty blockers. You have to go through a lot to get them. So that's the big difference. In the U.S., you can get them really easily.
You could just have one interview and then that's it. You pick up the medicine.
Yeah, very much. So that's the big difference. In Sweden, they because of these documentaries, I would say, they have really, make it hard for children to get on puberty blockers.
So your documentary deals with the effects on what is happening to the children and to society as a whole?
I would say the documentary is, we're following, when we started to do the documentary, we were started to explore the puberty blockers, the cross hormones, what it's doing to children. But then we found one case with a Christian lady, Abigail Martinez, and she had a family of 4 children, but one of her daughters wanted to change gender into becoming a boy. And then because of that, she lost the custody of her. And after that, after 3 years, the state ordered that the daughter should be on puberty blockers, but they were really hurtful for her. So she started to have a lot of pain, and she didn't feel like she was getting better. Even though she started to become a boy, she didn't feel better inside.
Right.
And that was the big thing. And in the end, she actually committed suicide. And it was, the whole story was so powerful when people actually had a Swedish cinematographer with me, and I worked with him in many productions before, and he's stone-faced. He never gets emotional, but even he was almost crying when he was listening to the story. And then we said we have to focus on that story. So we did drama parts of her story. So we had actors. So we actually did the acting parts in Sweden, and we do reenactments of her whole story to make it come alive, to make people really feel with her and what's happening with her daughter especially.
But you said something really important. You may change physically, but your emotions are not being solved by your physical transformation.
Exactly.
So, and your documentary, does it pick up on that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We see that, many times we interview a lot of experts, and they say, for example, Walt Hires, and he's been, one of the pioneers. He was changing gender, and then he actually regrets. Now he's over 80 years old. So, his experiences with this whole issue is very valuable for many. It's helping a lot of people. We have sexchangeregret.com.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's helping a lot of people, a lot of children with this issue that are struggling with it. So we see that, through him we learn that the core issue is many times is something totally else. It's not about gender. It's about, trauma, or it's about, vulnerability, or it could be also, in the school system, that people think it's cool. It's a cool thing to do because it's pushed for so hard. So people think, I'm trans. It can be like a
phase.
mysterious thing, phase, and so they learn that they just think that, I'm trans. So that must be. They think it's a solution for the problem.
Right.
That's the main thing that we are investigating. We see that many times it's something else, and when you go through real therapy, you learn what it could be. You can learn about yourself. Like, okay, I've been through a sexual trauma or something, in your early childhood.
That causes them to want the change.
Yeah, that causes them to want to change later on. And many times it could be because of autism. Many children with autism, they have, they feel that they are different from early on, from an early age, and then they think, it must be because I'm in the wrong body. But it's not that.
So they're looking for a solution that is not a solution.
So you guys are very research based, or your film really is into the research of this, and they're, I assume you're interviewing, I label it as victims of the gender transformation. Will you be talking to people who have experienced these surgeries firsthand? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been, mind-blowing because of these interviews. We learned so much about, and many cases where the children after just 1 or 2 years after the surgery, and when they went on puberty blockers, cross hormones, after just 1 or 2 years, they regret their decision, and then it's really hard to go back. They get a lot of help to change, but then when they want to get back, it's really hard. They get no help whatsoever sometimes. It's like especially with the surgery, they're really pushed for. And they're paid for, but then when they regret,
That they've done.
Yeah, it's like and especially also with the trans community. Many times they get a lot of support when they want to change, but then when they want to go back, they are like, they get a lot of hate. It's like they are, how can I put it? They feel like they are against them. So they experience a lot of. They have to change their names. Right? It's like many of the people we interview, they change their names. They can't be open with their names. It's becomes such a controversial issue. So I can clearly say that I'm really feeling empathy.
Yes.
Sorry about my English.
No.
So,
it's excellent.
With all these people that have gone through this, with the trans community, I can understand their feeling because they have these, underlying issues, and they didn't get the proper help, and then they went into this trans, as a solution, and many of them, they may be, it's hard to go back. So I can really feel with them, and I can understand them. So that's the main thing I think we will like to do with this documentary, is to show how it's so easy to get into this kind of thinking of that this can be a solution for all your problems, but many times it's not.
Do you think that America is a culture that is a bit obsessed with identities, if that makes sense? Because what I see is we try to almost erase labels and identities. We don't want to be named as anything, but then I see that we're almost creating identity by labeling ourselves as, trans, gay, lesbian, etc. What do you think feeds into this? Obviously, there's the underlying issues that you guys are exploring psychologically and within their childhood, but do you think even this culture that's embracing this identity, that fuels it?
That's one of the points that we want to make with the movie. It's identity, and I think it's not an American thing. It's the thing all around the world, especially about the young people today. You want to find your identity. Maybe it's always been like that. You want to find your identity, and that's the normal phase you're going through. As a teenager, you want to find your identity.
Who am I?
Yeah, who am I? I mean, that's a universal thing.
Right.
And then it gets, then it's one way to explore your identity. Sorry, I have to just push it. So that's one way to explore your identity, is through the transgender.
Because it's eye-catchy at the moment.
Right.
Yeah,
but the long-term effects are detrimental.
It is.
Right.
Yeah. That's what we learned. I mean, at least with all these people who have regrets. And of course, there are always also people that had that positive experience. So what we are exploring with the documentary is actually, the other side, because we see that in the media today, there's so much hype about transgenderism. And, they never show the other side, that you actually can get hurt a lot, by the surgeries, it's very hard when you regret, you have hurt your body.
Yes.
It's irreversible.
Yes.
And I read a lot of this, research that this is actually irreversible damage that you made. I mean, many times they get sterile, they can't get children, and it's really hurtful for their reproductive organs. I mean, it's
and the long-term use of the drugs, like you said, with the bone density alone, not to mention their reproductive rights, and everything else, heart, the whole system.
So,
what's the youngest age you've seen with the transformation? Because a lot of parents are even embracing adolescence and having a sex change.
Yeah. I mean, what the people we interviewed, some of them, they started to transform when they were 10 or 11 years old.
Goodness.
Yeah, but I've seen documentaries, other documentaries, and then it started in a really early age. I mean, not with the puberty blockers, but with the cross-dressing and everything. It starts at maybe 2-3 years old. In Swedish kindergarten, my son was really encouraged actually to cross-dress. When he was 2 years old, they encouraged him so much about cross-dressing. So then I'm like, oh, this is crazy. Why are they doing this? I was like, should I pull him out of preschool or something? Because I feel like this is why do they start to experiment so early? I mean, of course, if someone wants to try a dress, it should not be a problem. But this is like an agenda, and there's like a lot of books that talk about men and boys should wear dresses, and they start really early.
But the deal is, I mean, at the heart of it, sexuality should not be an issue as a child.
Right.
Yes. We should
like
not
protecting
be
their innocence.
Yes,
100%.
And the idea that we're already introducing them, in books and schools and everything else, to being sexual creatures when there's so much developmental things that they need to do just, to work within the family, to work within society, to work within this world. It has superseded everything. It has shadowed everything, and it is really not right.
So true.
Right.
Now, we interviewed both experts and parents about this issue as well, because this is a part of it. The sexuality in the schools, I mean, the education is really, so much more than it was like just 10 years ago. So now they are really encouraged to try all kinds of things at a really early age. And actually, one mother, she describes this process that her daughter actually, she's a liberal, and she's been a liberal, all her life.
Right.
But then, her daughter was 11 years old. And she came back after having a sexuality in class, sexuality lesson in class. After that, her daughter thought that, okay, I'm what do you call it? Not a lesbian, but I'm she thought she was kind of trans, she thought like non-binary trans.
Right.
So after just one class, and all the other all her other friends, they were also something other than just straight, So that's the identity thing. Coming back to that, they suddenly thought, oh, I have a mysterious identity now. I'm not just a normal straight person. Maybe I'm a bisexual, or I am. So everyone was something else
Right.
after this class.
Yeah.
And so she started to investigate how is our education system, and she found out a lot of things, how the teachers and how actually education system is actually also influenced a lot by the LGBTQ organizations that come in, and they have this kind of classes, and they're pushing this really hard, and that's actually something that makes people want to think that they are trans at an early age. And I mean, of course people should have a sexual education, it's not about that, but now it's been it's being pushed for so hard, and especially with all these variations,
it introduces confusion right off the bat. In other words, like you've got to pick, almost like you've got to pick a letter to be, and instead of just being the things that you need to learn to be a kindergartner, a first grader, a second grader. And it does take it out of the parents' hands of handling sexuality at an early age. I mean, if the child has questions.
Would you consider it child abuse?
What's
when
happening?
Parents encourage gender transformation in their children?
That's a good question. I would say in many cases it could actually be child abuse, because if the child himself or herself is only struggling with maybe autism, or maybe struggling with trauma or whatever, and you immediately put a stamp that, oh, you're trans, as a solution to your problems, it's definitely child abuse.
Right.
Because what's happening is that you get sent to a gender clinic, or you start to get on puberty blockers, and after that you get to cross hormones, and that's irreversible. You can't go back. I mean, you hurt your body in so many ways, and that's what I found out through these interviews, that people get hurt for life. So I would say in many cases it's child abuse. In some cases, of course, it's when you see that the child himself or herself is like, really being like, wanted to have dresses, if he's a boy, he wants to have dresses from an early age, and it's coming from himself really clearly, like this. Maybe in that case I would not say child abuse, because then it comes from himself. But in so many cases what we see is that this is coming from someone else. It's coming from peer pressure. It's coming from wanting to have an identity, or wanting to understand why you feel alone, like as a autist, or struggling with your own issues. So in those cases, I would say if you don't get a proper therapy, session, and the therapy, that's what we explore also. That a lot of therapists, they go directly for the trans as a solution, and in that case, I would say actually it's a challenge.
Yeah, we were talking last night about deep-seated issues and how you have to take it back to the root cause. To find out what was going on. And I think about my own childhood, which I grew up in the 60s and 70s, which was highly, highly sexualized. I mean, I remember, coming into the neighborhood, coming into the tree house, it was coming in the mailboxes, and you were able, it was a very disturbing, hard time for me. I can't imagine what they're being put through now, because it affected me the rest of my life enough where until I found my moral compass, which is Jesus Christ, I was floundering there. So, I mean, what do you suggest to parents whose child is pushing for this, or older child is pushing for this? What would you say to them? How would you encourage them to go deeper? You know, because it seems like you said, there's something deeper at it.
It's something deeper, often, One mother that we interviewed, she actually took her daughter from the school and put her in a smaller school, a private school. Just because the peer pressure and the education system and the teachers were encouraging this, so much.
Right.
So the teachers were actually, calling her a male name behind her back. So, I mean, when you have a situation like that, it's really hard, even if you discuss with them, then that's one of the problems that we explore in the movies, that, it places a wedge between the parent and the child. And in this case, it's really hard, even if you want to talk with your child, it's already a wedge there, and they think the parent is their enemy. And this comes from the school and the LGBTQ organizations, actually. And this is a real problem, that you have this, distance with your parents, and you think that the parents are the problem. Then you don't want to listen, whatever they say.
Right. You don't trust them anymore.
No, you don't trust them.
Right.
So
it takes the authority away.
It takes the authority away. So what she did was to place her child in another school, smaller private school, with better teachers,
Right.
and also, the whole family got engaged, and even the older generations, everyone, just to talk sense with a child, and
and to be neutral. I think
neutralize.
to let the child be a child.
Yeah, let the child be a child.
I think culture's created too many labels too, to where we make, like you were saying, sexuality someone's identity, whereas if these didn't exist, I think people have an innate human struggle with gravitating to different things to try and find an identity. But because culture, especially in American culture, has made it so mainstream and popular to have a label for everything from our race to our sexuality and everything in between, that it makes it this mainstream, like you were saying, almost peer pressure to migrate to that, to sort of find yourself. I'm curious, when does your film come out? When will it be? Is it already public? Or
it's not public yet. We're going to be at the Manhattan Film Festival in the 16th of June.
Coming up soon.
Yeah, come up soon.
That's exciting.
And we'll get your social media so we're able to post it with everything.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to this.
Absolutely.
And so tell us the name of your film again.
So it's Gender Transformation, the True Realities. So and we want to actually have a positive message in the end. I mean, how you can get aware of this, and as, like you said, how can we help children struggling with their identities, struggling with the influence from the schools and everything. But I think actually we find a very positive ending, even though it's a very tragic story. We find a positive message in the end, how to become more aware and how to get together about this issue and turn it into something positive, that we can understand the values of family, the values of real identity based on morality and based on being true to yourself. So
Well, we certainly appreciate that. You want to ask the question?
Yes. So our last question for you before we wrap up is, if you could ask the world or society one question, what would it be?
If I would ask the world one question?
Yes, like a pressing question, something you think about.
And they would all hear.
Yes.
What would it?
Wow.
It's a big question.
That's a big question. So one question to the world.
Yes.
To think about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. what would it mean to find out your true self, what your true identity? Like, what's the purpose of being here? How would you think about that if you were really serious? What's the true purpose? Looking at your life, what's the purpose of being here? I think that's really important. I think it's something that the ancients always talked about. If you look at Socrates in his philosophy, it's always about truth,
Right.
and we're kind of in this illusion. And when we start asking the right questions, we kind of get to the core. But sometimes maybe it's something maybe stopping us from asking these true questions, getting back to our true self. So I would say that would be the question. What's stopping you from finding your true self, from finding out your purpose?
That is
Very man, I love all our different answers.
Thank
This is
you
our,
so much.
our $1 million question for question. This one would ask us a question.
It is great.
For everyone.
So we do appreciate
Yeah, we
being
thank you so
here
much for your
with us
time.
at the NRB 2023.
Yes.
So we look forward to your documentary very much.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Well, thank
being
you.
here.
I will
Yeah,
take us
meeting
off
you.
record. Thank you so much for your time.
That
I
was
look for June
awesome,
16th,
Tobias.
you said?